Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rachel Melito, and I'm the marketing coordinator at the Yale School of Management Executive Education. We hope that you're doing well, and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us for this introduction to Yale's CIMA prep course, Investment Management, Theory and Practice. This is our 8th year offering this program, and in that time, we've worked with over 3,000 candidates. Today, we really encourage you to listen and engage. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions. This time is really for you. Our program director, Jim Dobbs, is very knowledgeable, so this is a great opportunity to pick his brain. To ask questions, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You can submit your question to everyone or just to me, but I suggest you send it to everyone as there may be similar questions in mind. If you have any technical issues, please send those directly to me via the chat. And now to introduce our program director. Jim Dobbs is CIMA certified. He is also CFP and CPWA certified. He was a financial advisor for 25 years and ran his own RIA practice before retiring to work full-time in his financial education company. Jim has worked with different certifying bodies and universities for the last 20 years, helping build and manage financial certification programs. More importantly, though, Jim has had extensive experience with the Investments and Wealth Institute. He personally helped create the CPWA certification and has served IWI in many roles, including as chair of IWI's Technical Advisory Board. You will see he is very passionate about what he does. Jim is committed to success, and he measures his success based on yours. Please welcome Jim Dobbs.
Well, thank you very much, Rachel. Can you see and hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. So hello, everybody. Let's take about an hour, give or take. Let's see how many questions you've got. Rachel's right. This time's for you. So really want to help you understand a little bit more about CIMA certification. Is it right for you and your career path? Is it right now? Is it right relative to other choices you have? And then if it is Yale, is our pretty unique program right for you? Want to help you make the best decision you can. Does it cost some money? Sure. Is it more expensive than a lot of designations? Yeah, but Yale's involved. So of course it's going to demand that premium, but I think it's just as much about opportunity cost and the time commitment you'd have. So I take your decision very seriously. As Rachel mentioned, I was an advisor for 20 something years, 25, 26 years before I retired to just teach now for the rest of my career. And so I was in your chair deciding which certifications to get, which ones to take a pass on, et cetera. So I want to kind of tackle it from the practitioner standpoint in that regard. Okay, first point of clarification. I think you all know this, but just in case. So at Yale, we offer a registered education course. It's IWI approved for CIMA certification education. We also provide in our program, I think we're the only ones that do, for no additional cost, all the test prep we think you'll ever need and more, as we'll talk about in a little bit, in our program. That's all part of the same cost. I'll go over cost in a little bit. But IWI, Investments and Wealth Institute, they are your certifying body. So we provide the education, we provide the test prep to help you pass their exam, their certification exam, but they own the exam, they control and manage the exam, they control and manage your certification. You'll submit your continuing education credits like I do every 2 years, and my recertification fee every 2 years. You, like I, will submit those to IWI every 2 years. So I just wanted to let you know the distinction there. If you haven't been to IWI's website, you see the link here. Some of you are probably jumping onto it right now on another screen, which is perfect. You want to poke your nose around because you're going to be working with them for a long, long time. I guess this is around my 20th year, maybe a little bit longer, in working with IWI. They have great conferences. That's how I first got to know them. They just go deeper than most organizations in our industry, and I appreciated that. The technical details that some of the other organizations and designations really just kind of gloss over. That's what drew me to them. I helped them create the CPWA certification 15 or 17 years ago, and have played numerous roles in helping them update and revise CIMA through the years. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Certified Investment Management Analyst, or CIMA designation. It's really for financial professionals, financial advisors, financial planners, really anybody in the investments world. I would say outside of institutional portfolio managers or securities analysts, I think CFA is a much better fit if you want to go manage $10 billion in a ETF through Nuveen or Vanguard or wherever, or be a securities analyst as you're working your way up to portfolio manager. I think CFA is the best fit there. But CIMA was created by a handful of Wharton professors and practitioners around 30 years ago. And their idea was, well, CFA is there and it's great, but it really, gosh, most financial professionals, investment professionals, they don't need to go that far in terms of their knowledge and education. So let's create a certification, a viable certification for all the rest of the investment professionals out there. And that's kind of how CIMA evolved. So if you're in that boat, like most of us, client facing, either an advisor, investment consultant, even a wholesaler or investment sales professional, CIMA is probably for you. That's who it was designed for. The certification process, don't want to spend too much time here because I want to talk more about the content and then some nuts and bolts. It's pretty easy in terms of the process. You will submit a candidacy application to IWI. You'll have to pass a background check. It'll probably be your U4, unless you're out of the banking or the accounting or trust world, that kind of thing. But if you have a U4, that's probably what they're going to use to run your background check. Just make sure your application matches up with your U4 and you should be just fine. Complete an executive education program. So one of the few that are registered with IWI, Yale is one of those, obviously. And once you complete your education program, you check that box, you'll be eligible to sit for your certification exam. And you'll go and take that. We're going to talk about test prep in just a little bit, as well as you prepare for that certification exam. Once you pass that certification exam, they're going to send you some licensing paperwork. You're going to complete that. You're going to send that back in along with your first certification fee. And again, every 2 years, you'll pay your recertification fee, just like I do. And they'll run a last background check just to make sure you're still acceptable from a regulatory standpoint. So that's it. That's the certification process. We'll talk about timing and what to expect in terms of study hours in just a minute. All right, so kind of wrapping up on the certification itself and applicability. So CIMA is all investments, just like CFA, but CFA is a much deeper dive, a much more quantitative dive, and much broader as well. And that's why it takes 4 years for most CFA candidates to complete their candidacy with CFA. Most fail at least one of those 3 exams at least once. And that's part of why it takes longer. The biggest reason is there's just a ton more material that you're studying. When individuals are interested in that, I often tell them, look, assuming it's right for you, you might want to go ahead and tie on a master's or something along with it, because you can do those both at the same time over a few years and also get a degree, given you're going to have to study so hard for your CFA charter. CIMA, again, really meant for just about all the rest of us other than institutional portfolio managers and analysts in the investment space. CFP is broader, as you would expect, Certified Financial Planner. So investments is just one sleeve. I would say the CIMA exam is harder than the CFP exam on a question-by-question basis. That being said, as you can see here, it takes about 1.5 years for most CFP candidates to complete certification, only about 6 months for the Yale CIMA candidates, according to the survey results we get from you guys once you complete the process. And that's not because it's easier, it's just there's a lot less material. We're just doing a really deep dive in investment. So if you did CFP, you don't have to have, but if you did, we're just now going to go deeper in all probability than you did in your CFP investments course. Now, that being said, the caveat is, if you did an undergrad or graduate level CFP program and you had multiple courses on investments, okay, now it might really be comparable to what you're going to do in CIMA. But if you took the standard CFP education course and test prep. We're just going to now take that ball and run with it a little bit farther. We're going to go deeper on the investment side. CPWA is the sister program in terms of financial certifications here at Yale. And it's like CFP in that it's financial planning, it's broad-based, but it's financial planning for those that are working with high net worths, let's say $5 to $50 million clients and client families. And so it also is it's a tighter, more narrow focus in terms of the technical content. Again, that's why very challenging exam. It just takes about 6 months for most people once they start. Don't want to get off too much on a tangent on that one because we're here to talk about CIMA today, but you don't have to have a CFP to do your CPWA. I think it certainly helps because with CPWA in that program, we get right in to the deep tax and estate planning right off the bat. So if one has not had the background in financial planning, CPWA is going to be a bit tougher. But anyway, 6 months for either of those. And on CIMA, hopefully now that helps you better understand the difference, particularly between CIMA and CFA. But if you've got any questions, go ahead and just pop those in, and I'll have Rachel stop here in a minute and see if we've got any early questions. All right, let's talk about the curriculum here, and I'll make you an offer in just a minute, but let's talk about the broad-based curriculum. This has changed a lot not a lot, it's changed significantly over the 20 or so years I've worked with IWI. I think we've seen less math being tested all the way up to their last revisions on the exam back in August of last year, 2024. So I'm going to put the math and math-related questions at only about 15%, no more than 20% of this exam is math now. The reason I bring that up is because there are a lot of people out there in the industry that earned their CIMA 10, 20, even 30 years ago. And when they took the exam, it was a lot of math. In fact, I would say it was mostly math back in the early days. When I came around maybe 20 years ago and then 15 when I started teaching, probably about 40% math, but I think it's all the way down to 15, maybe 20 at the highest. So don't let that scare you off. Now, look, if you're horrible at math, you're not even on this call because you're not interested in CIMA and you're not even in the investments business. You got to be decent at math, right, to be in our industry. But if it's been a while since you did some heavy lifting on math, don't worry about that. We've got plenty of information to help you. Now, you may need to spend more time in that area, but we've got all the resources and tools you need to get over that hurdle for this particular exam. We start with fundamentals with a new setup of CIMA in terms of the curriculum or topics list, which is then going to lead to how you study for your exam. So that's kind of like a business school or finance degree review. Statistics, a little bit of applied finance, some time value of money, economics review, at least as it relates to the markets and how they interact with financial markets. And then global capital markets review. We have Roger Ibbotson, a legend. So fortunate to have him here at Yale, and he walks you through the history of returns and risk as it relates to standard deviation anyway, and correlations in different markets through the decades, which I think is very helpful background, not only for this course, but for your investments practice as well. Then we get into investments. That's kind of the typical core series exam review. Most of you have taken your 7 and one of your 60-something Blue Sky Laws exams already, so you're going to have seen a lot of what's in investments section, or what they call domain 2. So that's equities, fixed income, alts, options, futures, and derivatives, although I think that's only 2% of the exam right now, so not a big amount. And then real estate or real assets, including real estate as well. Then it starts getting exciting in my mind. It's portfolio theory and behavioral finance. And only about 5 or 7 years ago did they combine these two. And I think that was a really smart move from a practical standpoint. I'm old enough to have done this portfolio theory thing for a long time and realized even myself decades ago that, wow, that's only part of it. You got to know the theory. You got to be able to create or recommend a defensible, viable strategy. But then there's this behavioral component, not only of myself as an advisor, and in my case, managing money on a discretionary basis for 20 years, I've got to control my own emotions and my own behavior as it relates to all the client money that I'm managing and making decisions on potentially any day or any week. But I need to also be able to help my clients, and that's even more challenging, I would argue, because there's so many different clients, so many different personalities, so many different backgrounds and histories, biases, etc. But if I can't help them control their emotions in a positive way, in a productive way, whatever we do in terms of building a portfolio or getting them into the right investments so that they can achieve their goals down the road, it may not matter. It may all blow up because they throw in the towel one day and say, I'm out. I can't handle this volatility, or everybody's getting rich in Bitcoin or something else. I've got to put all my money there. So the behavioral is absolutely critical. And I love the fact that they reinforce that by including that in the portfolio theory domain or section. Very cool. I think very smart. Okay, and then we're going to turn our minds to the math a little bit more, do risk and return. So that's all kinds of attribution and analysis. Why is an active manager successful? Why are they not? Even before that, what are their returns, risk adjusted, obviously fee and tax adjusted as well? And then comparison, not just absolute. We got to look at that in comparison to the other investments and figure all that out, especially if we're employing an active manager in our portfolio, as opposed to I'm just going to go straight indexes and do a strategic asset allocation and be done with it. So we're going to explore a lot of different ways to invest money. And then that starts to get into domain 5 there, where it's kind of bringing it all together. It's kind of a review on some of the things we did in domains 1 through 4, but it's pulling them all together in an application-based kind of client implementation way. And that's when we get into portfolio construction and all these different theories and models that we've discussed in the earlier domain. So hopefully that helps. That being said, here's my offer. If you don't have a copy of the most recent detailed content outline, you need to have it. You can get it on our website at Yale, or you can go to IWI's website. You can get it there as well, or you can just email me. If that's easier, I'll be happy to send you a copy of that. Then the last note I'll give you on the topic list here, and this covers not just the 5 domains and the 20 sections within those domains. It's all 500 plus topics and subtopics that they could test you on. And I'll talk more about that in the test prep portion of my talk. I think the practical application of this topic list, however, for you is, if you're still trying to consider whether CIMA is right for you, is this the best fit for me? Is this going to help me help my clients in a more effective way? Is this going to help me sell myself or my practice or the products and services that I offer to prospective clients in a better way? Go through this list, this 5-page list and the 500 topics, and just as you read it line by line, and yes, I recommend you read it line by line, just keep asking yourself, is this going to help? Is this going to help? Is this going to help? If once you get through most or all of it and you're like, oh yeah, way over half of this, 3/4 or more, then it's a slam dunk. From a content standpoint, this is a winner for you. This is on the money. If it's considerably less than 50%, then I think probably not. I'm happy to have a little discussion with you, just the two of us, by phone or email, if you still have questions after reading through it. But I think your intuition, unless you're brand new in the business, I think your intuition after reviewing this thoroughly is going to tell you, from a content standpoint, is this the right fit for you right now? Send me that email. I'll get you that content list, and I'll send you the formula sheet as well. I won't say too much about this because you'll learn more about it, of course, in our program if you come with us. That being said, you'll get this 2-pager, and it will be available to you when you take the certification exam. So you don't have to memorize these. You don't even have to memorize what the formula is, because the title, the name of what you're measuring, is right next to the formula on the formula sheet you get during the exam. So that's pretty cool. That being said, you do need to know how to do all of these. You need to know when to do them. So an example might be, okay, here's the investment policy statement. Here's what you're doing. You're doing a strategic asset allocation, and you have active and passive managers in that allocation, and you're looking to replace, I don't know, small cap, I would say small cap frontier markets, but let's go small cap Asian markets. And here are the three funds you've narrowed it down to. Here are your primary goals as an investment manager on behalf of your client. Now, which would be the better fit if you're looking for outperformance over time with consistency? Okay, well, the novice answer would be just go for alpha. What's outperformance? There are a number of different ways to measure alpha, and we get into that program. But information ratio actually does exactly that. It looks for outperformance over time and with consistency. So if you know that, then you just plug the numbers they give to you for those three funds. You plug it into your information ratio right there, and then that's going to tell you the answer to the question. So that's how you're going to use the formula sheet on this particular exam. All right, so send me an email. I'll be happy to send those to you. Before I go any further, you can be looking at the goals and objectives. And Rachel, let's see if we've got any early questions.
Okay, yes, we have a couple. So there's one, and you might be covering this later, but I'll ask it now. So this question is, will we receive a pass-fail result upon the completion of the exam? And how does the modified Angoff, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, Angoff method used for CIMA differ from that used for the S766 exams?
Yeah, good question. So a couple of things. One is on the modified Ingoff. Most of the accredited certification, well, all of the accredited financial certifications that I'm aware of use a modified Ingoff, and most of even the non-accredited, legitimate, what I would say more rigorous certifications use it. CFA charter uses it, CFP uses it as well. So what they do is instead of saying you need to score a 70%, so if you had 100 questions, there's a little bit more. We'll talk about that. But if you had only 100 questions on an exam, you got to get 70 of them right to pass. Modified Ingoff, actually, without all of it, you can go into IWI's website. They got a whole research paper link you can go to. But that being said, having worked with this for a couple of decades myself, what they do is they leave themselves a little bit of latitude because there is an exam question bank. And if you and I take our exams tomorrow, you and I might get different questions. I fully expect we are going to get different questions. Now, they shouldn't be that much different in the aggregate between the two of us, but mine might be a little easier or a little harder by one or two questions. Therefore, the passing score could be slightly different. Now, when I say slightly different, I'm meaning like maybe 1 percentage point. So not a big deal, but they allow themselves the room to make that adjustment by the psychometrician. Now, the psychometricians do that in advance. So depending on the questions you draw, they already know what your passing score is going to be when you test. So therefore, you do receive your pass-fail immediately. Well, I think it's like 30 or 60 seconds. And, you know, I remember those days pressing, are you done? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. And then you got to wait 30 or 60 seconds and kind of sweat it out while it's doing its thing. And then it'll tell you pass, fail. If you pass, it just says, congratulations, Jim, you passed. If you fail, it says, sorry, Jim, you failed. Well, I don't think it says sorry, but Jim, you failed this exam, and here is your score. And they give you the score, and it's a printout, so you can take it with you. And that will help you a little bit in terms of the information they give you for your retake. Now, we have a whole retake, what to do if you have to retake the exam. Just so you know, the serious majority of our students, our candidates, do not have to take this a second time. So if you follow our plan, put in the time, it's going to put the odds greatly in your favor that you're not going to have to retake. But we do have a retake study regimen for those who do fall into that boat. So hopefully that answers those questions. Great questions, though.
And then we have one more question here. Is there a specific location where they would need to take the exam, or are they able to take the exam in most major cities? This person is in Omaha, Nebraska.
Yep, gotcha. So yeah, you can take this all over. They use Pearson View testing centers. Those are all over the world, actually. So even in Omaha, well, not even in Omaha, Omaha is a pretty sizable city. You probably have multiple locations where you can go and test. You can also take it at home or in your office. Wouldn't recommend the office because the proctor is going to have to come up through your computer, so to speak, and take control of part of your computer. Well, most offices wouldn't allow that. You can do it at home. Pass rates are lower when people take it at home. I think there's a number of reasons for that. One of them is just I don't think people like put on their test clothes, when they're doing that. They're just taking it in a comfortable place, and that can be good to really reduce stress. But maybe they're not amped up enough, right? Maybe they're not quite focused enough to take the exam. So I generally, as you'll see in our program, recommend taking it at a testing center. I think that's a better route for most of you. But you can take it at home if you want to. They use Proctor View testing service for that. Oh, by the way, before I forget, so despite the fact they use modified Angoff on the CIMA certification exam, 77-ish looks like the number right now in terms of what you're going to need. It could be 76, could be 77. You're probably going to need one of those as a percentage of the questions that are scored. You need to get that percentage right to pass this exam. How do I know that? Because they don't release that. Because I talk with you guys every week after you've tested, pass or fail. We need to constantly get feedback, as you can imagine, to make sure we're getting you ready, getting candidates ready for the right things. And so candidates show us when they do fail, they show us those scores. And I can't remember the last time I saw like, oh, you got 78% right, but you failed. 77 happens sometimes, 76 happens sometimes. So it's right. It's kind of right in there, and definitely 75 and under is going to probably fail you on this exam. So I think the cut pass score is probably right around 76, 77%. That's the percentage of questions you need to get right to pass. Okay, probably too much information, but hopefully that helped. Any other questions, Rachel?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, so let's keep on going. So you've stared at this slide long enough, but I think it's important when you are going to put so much time and some money into a program like this to know what we're trying to help you accomplish. The first one's kind of obvious. I want comprehensive coverage of all those 500 topics. Now, we're not going to do all of that in the education course, and again, redundantly in the test prep. Some of those 500 are going to be in both, but some are going to be in one or the other. It really depends on what we think needs to be explained in depth in the education course versus what's practical and or on the exam, at least with high probability. And the latter there, of course, is going to be in the test prep section. So there's a little bit of a balancing that goes on, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. But I certainly want to cover all the 500 topics in this program as a whole. The second one is the most important one to me because I think it's the most impactful to you as it was for me when I was in practice, and that is, okay, great, I got some letters and I'm associated with Yale for the rest of my life, which is actually pretty awesome. But did it help me in my practice like right now? Can I do a better job? Can I help my clients more effectively? Can I bring in new and better clients if that's my role at the firm? So the practical application to me is maybe even the most important goal we have in all of this. Unfortunately, it's one of the hardest to measure, but that doesn't keep me from having that as a high-end goal. And I can tell you from just seeing you guys at the conferences year after year, that's one of the ways we see each other in person, given that this is a fully online course. That's the big payoff for everybody is when I have you guys tell me every year at the conferences, yeah, this has made a huge impact. The knowledge, the skills, the tools that I developed in this program not only helped me do a better job, but maybe just as importantly, I have a lot more confidence now, not just in dealing with my clients, but prospects as well. So that one I think is probably the biggest. And then last but not least, because again, I was in your seat a while ago, is pass the exam. So as you get closer and closer to your exam date, we'll talk about timing in a little. It's just going to all be about the exam. And I think that's okay. So we're going to start kind of broad. We're going to discuss a lot of content in the course videos. Some of that's going to be practical application. Some of that's going to be theory and really understanding the math behind some of these measurements. But when we get to the test prep, it's really just all about the exam, what I think is going to be on that exam, what I think is not, some of the tricks and gotchas along the way. So eventually it is just going to be about the exam as you head down this stretch. All right, some nuts and bolts, about $6,000, a little bit less. And that's all inclusive in the Yale program. I think you have to buy additional test prep if you do either of the other two options, but you can check IWI's website for a comparison of the different programs there. And that being said, I have no I have no objectivity when it comes to comparing our program to any other. Of course, I'm going to say ours is best because I think it is. But if you're interested in the other ones, yeah, you just need to go do their info session if they have one, ask them questions, and do your analysis, right? You want to pick the best program for you. It won't hurt my feelings if we're not the best fit for you. I think for most of you, it probably will be because we've served thousands and thousands of individuals over 7 or 8 years now, just trying to get the right fit of content and delivery styles that meet your desires, your wants, how you want to study, but also help you better understand this material and pass your exam. Again, that's a balancing that we have to do, but with constant feedback that we get from our candidates and the proactive surveys we send out, it only took a couple years to figure out really what's the right formula for this whole thing. I think we've got that down. Okay, there's no official start date here. It's open or ongoing enrollment, if you want to think about it that way. So you can begin whenever the timing works for you. I think that the one thing I would say about that is, I think since you know it's going to take you about 6 months on average, look, we've had people finish this whole thing and get certified within weeks, literally weeks. Now that's an exception. That doesn't happen all the time, but every year that happens to at least a handful of people. But on the flip side, if we have somebody that's a slower learner, maybe learning disabilities or challenges, maybe brand new to the business, maybe they're seeing a lot of this for the first time, it could take hundreds of hours, and I'll get into that in just a minute. But the point is, since it's probably going to take most of you around 6 months, just look out at your calendar. And I would even say over the next 3 months, are you going to be able to commit 8, 10 hours a week to this? Does your schedule look better or worse than normal over the next 3 months? If you're like, the next 3 months, give or take, is going to be really, really busy. Well, don't start now. You get access for a year. So, and again, that's about twice the time that it should take you. So just look at your schedule for the next few months. I think that will tell you. If you look at it and you're like me back in practice, where it's like, well, I don't know what my clients are going to throw at me, so I don't really know. But I knew administratively and managerial what my responsibilities are, where my heavy dates were. So if you look over the next 2 or 3 months and you go, it's not any worse than any other time of the year, okay, that could be a good time to start. So just make sure it's not a bad time to start. As mentioned, you will have access for 365 days to our program or online program. That being said, a couple things. You don't really need the 365 days in our program to be successful, even if you don't pass the CERT exam in the 365 days. You really just need to be online in the 365 days to pass our course. I'll show you the requirements of that in a minute. And then in a bind, if you will, so you're 11 months and 2 weeks in, and you just finished the course, which should only take you about 40 hours. So I don't know what you did that whole 11 and a half months, but you finally finish your 40 hours of doing the coursework. Then you could just download all our test prep. We're okay with that. Don't share it with anybody. For heaven's sakes, don't post it on the web. If we ever start seeing that kind of thing, I'm sure we will be more restrictive. But right now you can download it, have it on your hard drive. You just study off your own hard drive to take the certification exam. And for those of you who are reimbursed and your employer pays for it anyway, you could buy an extension for a year. I think that cost right now is $2,250, so a little over $2,000 if you just wanted the convenience to have it online. But you don't even need that. You just need to pass the course in the 365 days, which again, at 40 hours, you could crank that out, in 2 weekends or something if you had to. Okay. Let's get back to where we need to be here. Okay, so speaking of the structure, And again, ongoing enrollment or open enrollment, so to speak. Now, you got to apply for candidacy and be approved by IWI. And by the way, when you do that, when you complete your online application for CIMA candidacy, that's actually where you're going to select the education program. So I think they still use a drop down on their online application form. And when you get to choose your education provider, you just choose the drop down or click on the drop down and you choose Yale if we're the right fit for you. And that being said, it does take about 2 weeks. It's about a week, give or take, for IWI to run your background check and approve you or reach out to you for missing information on your application. And then it takes us about a week, give or take, a few days to get you set up at Yale. So the whole thing's about 2 weeks. This is an accredited certification. It's a very serious and formal process all the way through, as opposed to a lot of the designations out there which aren't so rigorous, and I've got some too. I just don't put them in my Vita and my CV or on my website, where, you just type in your information, give them your credit card, and like in 2 minutes, you're up and running and studying. You review some material, you take an easy test, and boom, within days, you actually got a designation. So this is not that. About 2 weeks to get into this process. 100% online for hours. Asynchronous means you're going to study when you want to. We have all kinds of guardrails and best practices, and we recommend you do this. We recommend you definitely don't do that, because candidates had bad experience if they tried to shortcut this or shortcut that. All of that guidance is there for you, but you're going to move through fast or slow. And like I mentioned on the last slide or two, we've had individuals finish 14 days is actually the record. I'm not tempting you or challenging you. That was an exceptional candidate with a lot of industry experience, already had some pretty rigorous certifications under her belt as well. But 14 days is the record. But it's taken the full part of a year and many hundreds of hours for others who, again, maybe have learning challenges or disabilities, just don't have a lot of background experience in the content anyway as well. So you're going to be somewhere in there. You're probably going to be in the 100 to 200 hour range, and I'll touch on that in just a second. Look, you can download, copy, save, and print everything, which I alluded to before. Just don't share it with anybody. That being said, that means you can study whenever and wherever you want. You've really only got to be online, live and online, to take some unproctored, I'll call them a test, but they're really more like quizzes after 11 section videos at the course level. That's all you got to be online for, because you're actually taking those. Those tests for the Yale course are just in the platform. So you don't go anywhere. They're not proctored. You can take them as many times as you need to. But we need some assessment before we say, yeah, Jim passed this Yale executive education course. And then again, you've got 365 days, but most of you are not going to need that. 100 to 200 hours. So I mentioned that just briefly a minute ago. And that is by far catches most of the candidates. Think of a bell-shaped curve in terms of how much time it takes total from like the day you log in to our online course to the day you take and pass your CIMA certification exam ought to be 100 to 200 hours. Now, I know that's a bit of a range, 100, 125, 150, 175, 200, whatever. But that's going to pick up most of you. But for some, it's certainly under 50 hours, the 14-day person. And for some, it's over 500 hours, although that's an exception as well. It just depends on all those things we've been talking about. I think the best part of the way we designed this particular program at Yale is it allows you to go fast or slow. And if you go fast, you're not in a cohort with everybody else. I mean, you kind of are, because you're in a discussion board and you can talk to each other, but your quickness is not going to freak out the people who are going slower or struggling. It's not going to stress them out, because your study and your completion is independent of them. And vice versa, if you're going fast and these other people are going slow and they're in your cohort and you have to move through together, that would be very, very frustrating. I didn't want that to happen either. So you're going to move through independently. And I think that's part of the beauty of this course. Okay, let's talk about online course learning tools for the next 2 slides, and then we'll see if we've got any more questions. And as we then really just begin to head down the stretch. Okay, so think of our program as 2 parts. Part A, or part 1, and part 2, part B. A is the course, which is required for all CIMA candidates except for CFAs. CFA charter holders can challenge the CIMA exam. They don't have to do an education course, but everybody else got to do an education course. So it's going to take about 30 to 40 hours. As you'll see in our program, if you choose us, I really don't want you to spend any more than 40 hours at the course level. I want you to watch it's 28 or 30 hours worth of videos. They're all on demand. Now they're sequential and I want you to go in order, but you don't have to. And you're just going to take notes. Don't even think about the certification exam. You're going to spend most of your time in the test prep area anyway. So just go through the lectures, make sure you understand these concepts and the applications. It's going to be a little bit of math and a handful of these as well. Just make sure you're doing the exercises, the sample problems, moving along with the instructor, taking some good notes. And then after each one of 11 sections of those videos, you're going to take a test. The test could be anywhere from 12 or 15 questions on the low end to about 30 questions on the high end. Again, not proctored. You can take it as many times as you need to. Because you're not there in New Haven with us, and Toby and I are teaching in the classroom, and we can see you're there and you're visibly present and all that stuff. We need an assessment tool just to make sure you're there and you're following along. These aren't easy tests, but they're not hard. They're definitely not as hard as the test prep. I just want to make sure you're doing what you need to do to move through. So after 40 hours watching those videos and passing those 11 short tests, you will have completed the education course. Oh, by the way, yeah, you see in the middle there, middle bullet, we have custom readings from a number of texts, including my Wiley text, really the only CIMA textbook, so to speak. And you don't need to buy that. You'll have a copy of the PDF version online that you can download and use if you want. And I think you will use the readings library. There's over 2,000 pages, about 2,500 pages of readings for this curriculum. And that's really meant not as a primary tool of learning in this course. It's a library. So when you're in a video, and then when you get into test prep and you're going through some summary and test prep slides and flashcards and practice questions, and you're like, I just don't quite get that. Okay, we'll now go into the readings library, and it's broken out by all the sections, and just read a little bit more about it. And sometimes you may have 7 pages of reading or 27 pages of readings, but that's really just meant to where you don't have to go Google something. You'll get a really nice, deep explanation. I mean, nothing wrong with Googling or using AI for any of this, but I wanted you to have an in-depth readings library as a resource as well. Okay, so once you pass the course, we're going to send you an email within 24 hours and IWI. Congratulations, Jim. You have passed the Yale CIMA education course. And now the test prep is going to populate for you. You're going to see it in your online program when you're at the course level. You just can't get into it because I don't even want you thinking about the test at the course level. I just want you to nail down those concepts, those really important concepts and application. Now the test prep opens up for you. You're into part B now, and now it's all about the exam. So I'm going to go through all 20 sections with over 1,500 test prep slides. And at the beginning of each of those sections, I'm actually just going to go through what from our students, our candidates over the last year, what they say is high and mid probability to show up on the exam. So it takes a lot of input, of course, to figure that out, but we have that all well charted here. And so we keep that log, we keep that algorithm, if you will, in Excel. And so we have a list that I can share with you in each of the 20 sections. Okay, these 3 topics are heavily tested. I fully expect you're going to get a question. So pay attention to those 15 slides in the test prep deck for this particular section. Oh, see these 2 things here? They almost never test on it. In fact, I can't even remember the last time they tested on it. Go ahead and skim over those slides we have, but I don't want you to spend much time on that because you're probably not going to test it. And then there's the squishy middle. Look, these 2 subsections are tested pretty regularly, but like not all the time and not next to never. So, you know, they're the 50-50 if you want to call it that, or 60-40, 40-60. So you need to study them and know them, but, you know, flip a coin on whether you'll see it or not. That's going to help you narrow down your focus and save you a lot of time when you're going through 500 topics trying to figure out what they're going to test and how they're going to test, right? So, and there's only 120 questions on this exam. So you're going to have to overstudy either way. I just don't want you wasting a ton of time studying things that just are really unlikely to show up on your exam. We've got over 1,000 practice questions as well. And I used to actually have those broken down into multiple mock exams. But the challenge, or I'll say the problem, was most candidates in the early days, they were just going straight to the mock exams. Why did they do that? Because that's what we did for our series exams, right? That's how we assessed where we were. Those mock exams were right on the money. Somehow they knew exactly what was going to be tested. And if you had a good memory, the mock exams were really all you needed. That's not going to fly here because these exams are mostly about going through a thinking process to demonstrate comprehension, not memory or recall. So therefore, I need you to go through those slides first in each of the 20 sections, and then go through the practice questions after each of those sections. And then at the end, finally, I'll give you a full-length mock exam that's timed and online, just as one final tool to get you ready. The point is, you will have, if you've done all my practice questions, which I highly recommend you do, you will have done over 10 mock exams worth of practice questions. So no shortage of practice exams in this particular program. All right, I'll let you stare at this lady who's seemingly very happy about taking a test, as Rachel tells us if we've got any other questions.
Yes, we've got one question here. It says, if you are a visual learner, will the videos be sufficient or do you need to read as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me start by saying when I started doing these online programs for CFP, when I was still in practice, I learned very, very quickly. We all learn, and I'm not an educator by trade. So it was all just by learning practically to get where I've gotten. We all learn differently. Some people are visual learners. Actually, most of us now are more visual and audio learners. We're also learners to where we need to do things in practice to really nail them down, as opposed to just highlight or memorize things by sight or read. That being said, I've got all the tools there for you, but I want you to use all of the tools. So if you're like me, I would like to see a video with Toby or Roger or me explaining something and giving some examples and walking you through that. Great, we have that. I'm not the biggest reader in the world, even though I did create that text, but I think that can be very, very valuable. And I want you to stretch your brain, even if you're not a big time reader, and get into the readings in any area that is important to your practice or highly testable. You'll get that list, right? We just talked about that. And that you just don't, so either one of those, and man, you're just not getting it. You saw Toby's explanation. You went back and watched it again, and you still it just doesn't feel perfect for you. Okay, now use the readings to take the deeper dive or to fill in the knowledge gaps. So yeah, if you're like me and a visual learner as well, you want to start with that. But I do want you to use the readings, and you use the readings to fill in those knowledge gaps. So hopefully that helps. Any other questions?
No, that was it.
Okay, great questions. Keep those coming. Okay, so you can see here 120 multiple choice style questions. Oh, by the way, we are going to make our practice questions, as you probably see on some of the posts out there on the web. Our practice questions in mock exam, most people would say, are harder than the certification exam. We did it that way by design. I don't want anybody to go into a certification exam and go, oh my gosh, this is not what I saw in test prep, or this is way harder. It needs to be the reverse. I'm going to rough you up a little bit in practice, as you might think of it, before you get to the game. So the game's not quite as tough. And look, it's still going to be tough. It's just not going to be brutal, hopefully, for you. 110 multiple choice questions, 110 are scored, 10 are beta unscored. Just like most of these other certification exams, you won't know which are the 10 non-scored items. I'll give you some heads up in the test prep on how to identify those. But the bottom line is you want to take them all as if they're all being scored, right? So you just keep on going and just pretend they're all scored, and don't worry about that. You've got 4 hours to do this. Is that enough time for most people? Well, yes, because most of ours pass on the first attempt. If that were not the case, I'd probably have to say no. 4 hours is a real stretch. What you want to do, as you'll see in our test prep, is you want to try to finish at about 3.5 hours. I mean, 3 hours, great, but I mean, no more than 3.5 hours. Give yourself at least 20, if not 30 minutes to go back, because it is computer based, right? So we've all done those now. Submit your answer, or submit and review for later. So you can either put it in the bucket, I'm done, I don't ever want to see it again, or submit but review later. So if you've got 12 or 22 questions and you've got half an hour, great, you get to go back through those. So we give you some ideas on how to cherry pick some of those in terms of time management along the way. Again, we talked earlier, much earlier in the info session, testing center or online. They're both available to you. Calculator policy, you are going to need a financial calculator. Statistical calculators are not allowed on this exam for a number of probably what are obvious reasons. That being said, the HP 10B2 Plus and the TIBA 2 Plus are probably the two most popular calculators I see amongst our candidates. I use an old HP 12C because I'm old, and that one works fine, but I wouldn't recommend that to you, the HP 12C, if you're new to calculators. These are the easier to get up the learning curve calculators, and I would recommend you use those. Hey, look, if you're new to the calculator or don't have one or just need some practice, go to this website, tvmcalcs.com. It's free. Professor out of Colorado created this years ago, and it's awesome. It's got 12 or 15 examples of common investment and financial questions and problem sets. And for each of about 12 different calculators, including these two, he actually walks you through step by step, including, well, which buttons do you press and in what order, if it matters. So if you need a refresher, go spend half an hour using your calculator, going through his examples. He even says, look, if you're doing CIMA or CFP or CFA or whatever, here are the calculators I recommend. So anyway, great website. If you need to spend a little time just to get kind of up to speed on your calculator, do that before at the beginning of when you start our program. All right, well, where's my help? Really important. First of all, I would say this. Look, this program is not it's not a part of a degree program. It's not for academic credit at Yale. It's an executive course, and it's built and priced that way. So there's only so much content specialist or instructor guidance and interaction that you get. I'll kind of hit that at the end, although you can kind of skip down with your eyeballs there and see what that limit is going to be. But I'll say this. Having done this for so many years and so many thousands of candidates, and then even more years and more thousands on the CFP level before working with CIMA and CPWA, I kind of already know where the challenges are going to be, especially regarding the exam. So I can get ahead of that with not only a good orientation video and review, but best practices, tips, and videos throughout. Do this, don't do that, do that. Students have definitely done better if they follow this strategy, and they've really done horribly if they follow this. So you've got all that kind of guidance. That's going to help take the edge off and answer some questions along the way. The discussion board in this program is great. So all the 20 sections are there. I've got all the most frequently asked questions where I thought there was good interaction between other students and/or Eric and myself, were the instructors that work with you guys on the discussion board on a regular basis. I've kept those in there so they are like an FAQ. So if you're struggling with a CAPM or some behavioral finance and how it differs from another or whatever, you just go into that section, do a Control F search on your keyboard, and go to those keywords and see if others have asked. They probably have, and I've probably kept it in there. So I've even got discussions from 4 or 5 years ago if I thought they were really on point. So that's going to help in terms of you getting your questions answered. Another reason I want you to work your best to answer your own questions before you reach out is, if you have to think through the process, if you have to engage the part of the brain to figure something out versus, well, I just tell you what the answer is. Well, it's kind of like reading. You see it on a slide or in a book, but if you're like me, in 2 days or 2 weeks, you're probably going to forget. I would even forget what I asked of you 2 weeks ago, let alone what you told me was the right answer. So I really want you to get used to figuring things out yourself. You will have tools and resources, but if for no other reason on your 4-hour exam, there's not going to be anybody there to answer your questions. You got to figure it out. So I want you to get in the habit of figuring it out. And then at the very end, as you can see here on point 5, you got roughly a 12 question limit. We beta tested that for a couple of years. And even right now, the average number of questions is about 4 or 4.5 for candidates for their whole 12 months on content related questions. So 12 is plenty. And again, the idea is become more self-sufficient in terms of getting your own questions answered. And look, you can ask each other whatever you want on the discussion board at any time. That will not count against your 12 questions. Now, if one of the instructors jumps in, that will count. But anyway, that's all explained in the course. Look, you do have 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, Eastern time. Full support from Dobbs Education and Yale staff. You actually have Canvas tech help 24/7. Oh, my videos don't look right. Canvas is a really incredibly, knock on wood, solid and consistent platform. That's one of the reasons we use them. It hardly ever has any issues, and that's usually only to do with routine maintenance in weird, midnight hours on the weekend or something. But if you're jumping around from computer to computer or operating system to operating system or browser to browser or home to office, yeah, you could be experiencing the way it looks and feels differently. So you got Canvas to reach out if you have any of those issues. And again, on the content questions, you've got your lifelines, as we call them. You've got 12 of those. I encourage you to use all of them, even though most candidates only use about 4 or 4.5. You just want to pick them carefully and choose them carefully. And then if you ever have a question on your study plan, here's the timing. I got 3 months to go before I think I need a test, or, here I've gone through all of it once. Here's how I want to kind of go back and hit the highlights again. Is this a good strategy? There's no limit on phone calls or Zoom calls or emails with Eric or me to just make sure you're doing the right thing. I want you to have a good plan and feel good about that. So all you're concerned about is the content. That's what I'm really looking for. All right. You can read more about all the program faculty on our website. I got the full bios there. There are about 3 more instructors, practitioners, and Yale faculty as well. Toby is our lead faculty. He is outstanding. I've been working with him for about 20 years, not just at Yale, but University of Chicago, where we both were before Yale, and on different programs, not just CIMA certification. He is outstanding. If you want to get a feel for Toby, like not behind the lecture podium, click on this fireside chat and you can kind of get a feel for his personality, because he's going to do he's going to do most of the heavy lifting at the course level. So I think that'll give you a good idea on whether you think he's a good communicator for your learning style. All right, we take feedback very carefully. I don't mean this to be braggadocious. You can read, we got more of this stuff on our website as well. I just want you to know we are not perfect, even though we try to be sometimes. But we're constantly getting feedback from you guys, even though we're in our 8th year and well over, I think it's now 3,500 candidates. We just want to make sure that we're doing the best we can. There's no perfect here. And even if there was, there really wouldn't be, because your learning styles and preferences are all different. So we just want to make sure we're doing a really great job for most of you most of the time, knowing there will be outliers on either side. And so we do take this seriously. We take your feedback seriously so we can build the best program and maintain and manage the best program that we have. All right, and then when you're ready to get started, again, you're going to go through IWI's website, fill out their CIMA candidacy online form. You can get to that form, obviously, in their website, or you can go to our website and then click on the button. It'll just take you to their website where you're actually going to go in and fill out the form. And I think I mentioned before, about 2 weeks. So it's not a 2 minute or 2 hour or even overnight kind of thing. There's a lot of hoops that have to be jumped through to get you all set up. And then finally, before we kind of wrap it up with any final questions, Rachel's around. If you've got questions on Yale School of Management, other executive education programs, if you need that detailed content outline or the formula sheet, go ahead and just reach out to me by email. Be happy to send that to you and a little bit more information on the program, answer any questions you have by email as well. So that's it for me, Rachel. Let's see if we've got any final questions.
We do. So this question is, what is the pass rate overall and the pass rate for those who went through the Yale program?
Yeah, good question. So if you want to see the pass rates, go to IWI's website, go under CIMA and the CIMA certification exam in the drop down under the CIMA certification tab. I think it's 77% since the implementation of the August changes to the CIMA certification exam. But go to their website, they update that periodically. You can find it there. I wish I could tell you what the Yale candidate pass rate is. By rule, we can't say that. None of us now can say, none of us as education or test prep providers can say that. All I can say is I wish we could tell you what that is. But for the overall, just go into the IWI website and you'll see the current pass rate data there. Good question, though.
Okay, and it looks like that's it for questions.
All right. Well, I know Rachel's going to have a few thoughts for you here as we wrap up, but thank you. Hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, any personal questions or questions that you didn't feel comfortable asking in front of the group, feel free to reach out to me at either one of these emails. I'll be happy to help you in whatever way I can to determine if this certification is right for you and if Yale is a good fit. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jim. And thanks to all of you for joining us and for submitting all of your questions. For more information, you can visit our website, which I popped into the chat, or you can reach out to us directly with any additional questions. This webinar, including the video recording and slides, will be shared with you in the coming days. While we hope to see you in our program, we truly hope that you find a program and path that's the best fit for you. Thank you again for joining us. This concludes the webinar.